Welcome everyone to the start of a brand new IDW Sonic miniseries, Fang the Hunter. Before continuing, I'm letting you know that there will be spoilers from this point forward. This miniseries will be a bit different from the others. For one, it's set in the classic era. For those who don't know, IDW Sonic started telling stories set in the classic era in 2021. The classic era is considered to be more lighthearted and wacky compared to the main series. By the way, the main series is currently on hiatus due to the Fang miniseries. I covered that near the end of my issue 68 review. Anyway, the reason for these classic era specials is because, at the moment, they're a celebration of the 30th anniversary of a character's debut to the franchise. 2021 focused on Sonic and by extension Dr. Eggman. 2022 focused on Miles Tails Per Hour, and 2023 focused on Amy Rose and by extension Metal Sonic. This brings us to the second reason this miniseries is different. Its stars. I'm not just talking about them being villains. There were villain-focused miniseries in the past. No, this is the first miniseries that focuses on villains limited to the classic era. Yeah, that kinda ties it to the first reason, but you know what I mean. So why Fang and his partners in crime, Bean and Bark? Well, it goes back to the 30th anniversaries of the game characters. And in Fang's case, 2024 is his anniversary year. Along with Knuckles, of course. He'll get his own special later down the line. In November of 1994, a game called Sonic Triple Trouble was released for the Sega Game Gear, and it marked Fang's debut as one of the troublemakers. I'm going to go a little deeper about Fang, for the sake of those unfamiliar with this character. If you already know who this guy is and want to skip straight to the summary, jump ahead to around this time here, or the next chapter of this video, whatever's easier for you. Like I said, Fang made his debut in Sonic Triple Trouble. He's a treasure hunter that got a hold of most of the Chaos Emeralds, 5 to be exact, though there were only 6 emeralds in the game, and Eggman had number 6. If our heroes were to go after the Chaos Emeralds in the special stages, they would encounter Fang at the end. For the first emerald, he fumbles big time. But for the remaining 4, he would hop onto his bike, the Marvelous Queen, and attempt to stop the heroes from getting them. After getting the last emerald in his possession, Fang never appears in the game again. The only time you would see the guy at the end is if the player fails to get all the emeralds, and he reveals at the try again screen how many he has left. He would later appear in the spin-off games Sonic Drift 2 and Sonic the Fighters, as well as having cameo appearances in a number of other games before showing up in Sonic Mania. Sort of. It was actually Heavy Magician using her powers to shapeshift into the guy. He returned for real in the game Sonic Superstars as one of the main antagonists, and it's here that he started using the alias Fang the Hunter. Oh yes, his name. When Sonic Triple Trouble was released, he was known as Fang the Sniper. In Japan. Over in the West, he was given the name Knack the Weasel, even though he's not a weasel. He's actually a jerboa, a small hopping rodent that lives in deserts. That would explain Fang's ability to hop around using his tail. If you want to be technical, he was originally half jerboa and half wolf. But recently, he was made a full jerboa for simplicity's sake. At one point, he was briefly given the name Jet the Sniper. Yes, the name Jet was considered for a Sonic character before a certain Green Hawk. Here's the thing about his names. They're all canon, even the Jet name. In a comic prequel to Sonic Superstars, he explained to Eggman that being the kind of criminal that he is, it's a good idea to constantly change one's alias. You know, to throw authorities off the scent. So now he's currently using the name Fang the Hunter. Let's move on to his 2 partners. Bean the Dynamite and Bark the Polar Bear first appeared in the aforementioned Sonic the Fighters. The former even resembles characters from the game Dynamite Ducks. Despite the similarities, Bean is not a duck. He's a woodpecker. Like Fang, Bean and Bark would cameo in a number of other games, and were even alternate forms for Heavy Magician in Sonic Mania. But unlike Fang, they've not properly appeared in any other Sonic game since Fighters. I should point out that Sonic the Fighters was released in 1996. meaning we're not celebrating the anniversary of these two. So where did the idea of these three teaming up come from? Why, the Archie Sonic comics, of course. Fang, or Knack in this case, Bean, who was a duck in those comics, and Bark joined forces and became known as Team Hooligan, or the Hooligans. At the time of the Archie Sonic books, the trio were only known from the spin-off games. While Knack has popped up here and there since the comic adaptation of Sonic Triple Trouble to cause trouble for our heroes, with various degrees of success, yes, that's him getting kneed in the groin, Bean and Bark would make their debut in issue 160, and usually they would appear as a duo. The trio would officially become the Hooligans in the story set within the pages of the Archie Sonic Universe spin-off book. They were one of 4 teams going after one of Blaze's Soul Emeralds. They've stuck together ever since, and no amount of reboots or comic cancellations can separate this trio. For when they first appeared in the Sonic 30th Anniversary special for IDW, they were still a team. Though I don't think they're called the Hooligans in this continuity. I think the reason they're sticking together is because of influences from the games. Some games have kinda lumped the trio together thanks to wanted posters in Sonic Generations and Sonic Mania, and the previously mentioned alternate forms Heavy Magician utilizes. That would not have been possible if not for the Archie books bringing them together. Even their personalities, Bean's wacky bomber antics and Bark being quiet, strong, and secretly a softie, were carried over from the Archie books. It probably helped that Ian Flynn was involved in the Archie books during the later years, as well as working on the IDW Sonic 30th Anniversary special. And he's involved with this miniseries as well. So without further ado, let's finally get started. We catch the Fang gang preparing to set off a trap to try and deal with an unsuspecting Sonic with a rock. Sonic must have been so tired for him not to notice the Fang gang setting up this trap. Wait a minute, Sonic relaxing on a hammock using palm trees to hold it up? Now where have I seen that before? Unfortunately for the trio, when they triggered the trap, the rock completely misses Sonic. They move on to plan B, a direct assault. It also doesn't work out as 1. Fang had to restrain Bean in order to prevent him from accidentally blowing up the Marvelous Queen. Fang loves that bike. As a consequence, Bean drops one of his active bombs near them, and you can see the results. The second reason the assault fails is because they're up against Sonic the Hedgehog. So when Bark attempts a suplex, the Hedgehog easily turns the tables. Sonic thinks Eggman hired the game to capture him, until Fang reveals why he went through all this trouble. He believes Sonic has information about a rumored 8th Chaos Emerald, and would not freely give it up. This confuses Sonic. At first he had to make sure Fang wasn't referring to the Master Emerald, but after Fang points out it's an emerald similar to the others, Sonic explains that based on personal experience, there are only 7 emeralds. No more, no less. Fang's not buying it. He still believes there's a fabled 8th emerald. He even has notes about its possible color. And when the Fang gang do find it, they'll be rewarded handsomely enough to buy some personal things like a portable freezer for Bark, a premium soccer ball for Bean, and massive upgrades to Fang's bike. Sonic then shoos them away so he can resume his nap. Fang vows to return to rub the 8th emerald in Sonic's face. Not long after the Fang gang leave, Tails flies in. He got word that a flying battleship attacked Marble Zone on South Island, and then just vanished right after. No speedy getaway or anything, it just disappeared in a blink of an eye. Now that's something Sonic's interested in, and the two head off to investigate. Meanwhile, the Fang gang are heading to the next possible place where they can get info about the 8th emerald, Angel Island. Fang figures that the guy who's been guarding a big emerald for all his life must know something about a smaller one. As they land near the Master Emerald Shrine, Knuckles is nowhere in the vicinity, and Fang makes it absolutely clear they are not to go after the Master Emerald. This makes Bean and Bark question why are they even hanging out with Fang in the first place. As Bean points out, Fang needs him and Bark more than they need him. Fang and Bean then go back and forth about the pros and cons of taking crazy jobs, especially since a lot of them involve working with Eggman. Fang points out that it has worked out for them since the doctor pays them in advance. During this discussion, there's a bit of a callback to their involvement in the Sonic 30th anniversary story, Seasons of Chaos, and how in the end, they scored a Chaos Emerald. Well, it turns out Bean lost it before they can cash it in. Bean then counters with the time the trio tried stealing a pie from Amy. Fang admits that one was a mistake. Regardless of their win-loss ratio, Fang is able to convince the two to stick around a little longer, until they score the 8th emerald. They begin their search for Knuckles, unaware that the Echidna was in the area the whole time, secretly watching them from a bush. The Fang gang are in Mushroom Hill Zone, where they pick up some fresh tracks belonging to Knuckles. They believe they have a chance to ambush him. Thing is though, they're on Knuckles' home turf, and therefore he has the advantage. He proves this by dealing with the Fang gang one at a time. First it's Bean thanks to manipulating the giant mushrooms to get him entangled in some vines. When Fang and Bark split up to find Bean, the latter discovers a mushroom scarecrow wearing a red neckerchief similar to Bean's. It might even be Bean's, and Knuckles took it off him to set up this trap, which Bark falls for. Knuckles pulls a classic trick on Bark, similar to the one he pulled on Sonic back in the day, though instead of sending Bark to another part of the area, Knuckles just imprisons him. Fang notices Knuckles' tracks looping around, and when he realizes Bean and Bark are missing, he figures out that Knuckles is tracking them. Part 1 ends with Fang determined to hunt down Knuckles before Knuckles hunts down him. So the main plot of the miniseries has our Fang gang hunting down a rumored 8th Chaos Emerald. More than likely the idea of an 8th Emerald comes from the plot of Sonic the Fighters, a game where, once again, Fang, Bean, and Bark are playable characters. The plot of that game is the player character must fight in a tournament to gather all 8 Chaos Emeralds from their defeated opponents, and use them to power a ship called the Lunar Fox, so they can reach the Death Egg 2 and defeat Eggman. Each emerald color matches the character guarding it. I think Fang trying to remember the color of the emerald is a subtle nod to that, since canonically, there are no orange or pink colored emeralds. Now I wonder if the events of Sonic the Fighters happened, and was modified to account for only the 7 emeralds. Speaking of, thanks to Sonic Frontiers, we know a bit more about the 7 emeralds. Spoilers incoming for that game, by the way. The 7 emeralds were originally owned by alien refugees called the Ancients, who escaped their doomed home world, and they ended up on Sonic's world a long time ago, thanks to the Master Emerald pulling the emeralds towards it. Now for a moment, let's entertain the possibility that there may be an 8th emerald. The Master Emerald could have pulled it into Sonic's world sometime before or after the main 7's arrival. There is also the possibility that it's another mystical gem, and that someone may have mistaken it for an emerald. Or more than likely, it's all a big hoax. That's what Fang is aiming to find out. And admittedly, I'm curious to see if and what the Fang gang finds. We just have to watch them go through some wacky Looney Tunes-esque shenanigans against our heroes to get there. Which I don't mind. Again, we are in the classic era. What is interesting is that there's some internal conflict within the gang, brought up by Bean of all people. If you look at it from their point of view, they see this quest for a rumored 8th emerald as another of Fang's questionable actions that'll get them diddly squat. There's also the possibility that Fang doesn't treat Bean and Bark with respect. Heck, he constantly refers to them as Bomb Mook and Scarf Mook respectively. But believe it or not, he does kinda care for the two. And I'm not just talking about his concern for them in this issue. In the Amy Rose 30th anniversary special, he was angry that Eggman imprisoned them separately and vowed to get them back. He even helped resolve the situation. Also in that special, the other two seemed willing to rejoin Fang as soon as possible. And as Fang admits to the two, they did have some good times. Note that this brief conflict comes after Fang refuses to let Bean and Bark steal a supposedly unguarded Master Emerald for the sake of something that may or may not exist. In hindsight, it was probably a good thing they didn't go after the Master Emerald since Knuckles was hiding in the bushes like he did on a certain game cover. But all they did was delay the inevitable. I gotta give Knuckles props. When it comes to defending his home, it's clear he knows what he's doing. Whether it was intentional or not, giving Knuckles a moment to shine is probably because 2024 is also his anniversary year. And I like to imagine meta-wise, this is Knuckles laying his frustration out on the gang due to the fact that he has to share a year with this guy. For the record, I was making a joke. I like Fang fine, except for his boss fights in Sonic Superstars. They can die in a fire. Of course, the hunt for a rumored 8th Emerald might not sustain a 4-issue miniseries alone. So we're introduced to its secondary plot, the mysterious disappearing battleship that Sonic and Tails are investigating. And yes, this will be an ongoing plot thread thanks to future solicitations, and it will connect to Fang's plot eventually. Now about this disappearing battleship. While the possibility of a flying ghost ship could be interesting, it's more than likely an airship with a cloaking device, or a really fancy teleporter. Sonic's behavior is a bit jerkish here when Tails first arrives and explains the airship strike over Marble Zone, and I've read that people aren't happy about it. I am okay with this portrayal. This is classic Sonic, i.e. younger Sonic. Of course he wouldn't be as mature as his modern counterpart, and to be honest, wouldn't you get frustrated if someone interrupted your me time, even though he is your best buddy? That and Sonic was already livid that his me time was interrupted moments earlier by a trio of jerks. But that mysterious airship perks him right up. Even with the addition of this airship plot, it will be interesting to see where all this goes. Especially with our gang of criminal misfits going on their quest to find the 8th Emerald, and possibly get everything they want in the aftermath. But first, they have to contend with Knuckles. Can Fang track him down, free his comrades, and get any information about the 8th Emerald? We'll find out more in issue 2. See you then. You know guys, it's probably not a good idea to accept advice about setting up traps from Wile E. Coyote.